My name is Mark and I'm an alcoholic. And this is a book study. This is the first part of the book. And so I think we want to just get right into it. The first thing I was asked to do from my sponsor was to draw the circle triangle on this page, in the title page of Alcoholics Anonymous book. And on one side, it has unity. And I bring my body to the fellowship for unity. Now, the book talks about two different kinds of fellowship. It talks about the spirit of the fellowship and the unity we get from coming to meetings, but it also talks about creating fellowship much later on. And with my own alcoholism, one of the things that drove me to drinking was a lack of unity, because that's what I got from drinking, was a sense of unity, a sense that I belonged in the world and that it was an okay place. I didn't realize it at the time, but obviously I didn't have that before I took my first drink. So the alcohol fixed that. And that's one of the main things that it did, until, of course, I went overboard with it. And we're going to get into the doctor's opinion, which talks about the physical part of alcoholism. Down at the bottom, it has recovery. Mm-hmm. So I bring my mind to the steps for recovery. And I want to write that on there, down at the bottom. The steps are what treats my mind through a spiritual experience. Am I going too fast?
No.
On the other side, it has service. I take an awakened spirit as the result of these steps out into the world, back into AA and into my family and job, to be of service. And service is what treats my spirit. Prayer, meditation, all of those things prepare me for that. The circle means that if I do these things in equal proportion, I can be whole, have balance in my life. And that's really all I ever wanted, was to feel whole. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take this book and we're going to use it as a tool to discover alcoholism in me. And what I do is I use this book as a tool, and I use the doctor's opinion and pages 17 to the top of page 23 to answer this question: how am I powerless over alcohol physically? What happens once I take a drink? And so I go through the book, I go through the doctor's opinion. I want to write that at the top of the doctor's opinion, so it keeps me on track of what I'm pointed at. I want to turn statements into question, and I want to bring my experience to this book and answer these questions with my experience, not with my head, but with my experience with drinking. And so I want to turn these statements into questions and highlight the statement and give it an answer, but I want to expand the question. I don't want to answer the question right away. I want the length between the time when I ask the question or turn the statement into a question and when I answer it is the length of my experience with this book. So the longer that is, the more experience I have with that. So I don't want to just answer that off the top of my head. I want to question it and make it into a real question. Yes, maybe it is, and maybe it isn't, and use my experience to answer that. For example, We of Alcoholics Anonymous, this is the doctor's opinion, we of Alcoholics Anonymous believe that the reader will be interested in the medical estimate of the plan of recovery described in this book. Am I interested in the medical estimate of the plan of recovery described in this book? Well, since I can't stop drinking and can't stay stopped, and we're looking at the body, is there a medical reason why when I take this drink, I can't control the amount, that I want the next one worse and the next one worse and the next one worse? And this doctor, he knew about the physical part of alcoholism. We have a doctor also, Dr. Carl Jung, who knew about my mind, the mind of an alcoholic. And then we have Harry Tebow, which is a contributor to AA. He knew about our spirit. But this doctor, his main focus was the physical part of alcoholism. It says convincing testimony must surely come from medical men who have had experience with the suffering of our members and have witnessed our return to health. The shrink they sent me to, the medical doctor they sent me to at 23, he told me, Lee, yes, I'm going to treat you and get you over this if you live. But once you're done with that, I don't want to see you again. Well, when they sent me to a shrink from 7 years later, he basically told me the same thing. He said, you call these people. And he gave me the number to Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, I didn't call them, but a few weeks later, my mom did. And they did a 12-step call on me. So these men knew about alcoholism. And this guy, this Dr. Silkworth, he was at the time, and maybe even today, understood alcoholism on a physical level better than anyone. A well-known doctor, chief physician at a nationally prominent hospital specializing in alcoholic and drug addiction, gave Alcoholics Anonymous this letter. Now, it's extremely important that I find what's wrong with me. It's not important what's wrong with me, what my problem is, whether I'm an addict or alcoholic, and there's all kinds of controversy, I suppose, about that. But the important thing is that I know that the truth is what's going to set me free. And so I need the truth about what's wrong with me, because that's going to give me power. Without that truth, I don't have any power. Without that truth of powerlessness, I don't have any power. I'm probably not going to finish this. So it's incredibly important that I investigate that and define the difference between alcoholism, addiction, overeater, or Al-Anon, or whatever it is that's my problem. I was told that there are two things I need for this process. If it's a spiritual process of any kind, it's a question and the truth, not a lie and the answer. So we're not looking for answers in the book. We're looking for the correct questions. It says, to whom it may concern, this doctor begins to write, the doctor has specialized in the treatment of alcoholism for many years. In late 1934, the doctor attended a patient who he had been a competent businessman of good earning capacity, was an alcoholic this doctor had come to regard as hopeless. Hopeless means wants to stop but can't. If I want to stop and I can't stop, then I'm hopeless. In the course of his third treatment, he acquired certain ideas concerning a possible means of recovery. Are you interested in a possible means of recovery? That's a great question. As part of his rehabilitation, he commenced to present his conceptions to other alcoholics, impressing upon them they must do likewise with still others. This has become a basis of a rapidly growing fellowship of these men and their families. So the basis of this thing is carrying this message: if I've recovered. This man and over 100 others appear to have recovered. This doctor personally knows scores of cases who were of the type where other methods had failed completely. Have I tried other methods other than Alcoholics Anonymous to recover? And I want to sit with that. What are the things I've tried? You know, just stopping, religion, all kinds of stuff. These facts appear to be of extreme medical importance because of the extraordinary possibility of rapid growth inherent in this group. They may mark a new epoch in the annals of alcoholism. These men may well have a remedy for thousands of such situations. So not only the situations of alcoholism, thousands of such situations. You may rely absolutely on anything they say about themselves. Very truly yours, William D. Silkworth, MD. What does the D stand for? Anybody know?
Oh, William D.
Duncan, William Duncan Silkworth, medical doctor.
Is that it?
I think so. Is it?
No.
What is it?
I don't think so. The physician who, at our request, gave us this letter has been kind enough to enlarge upon his views in another statement which follows. In this statement, he confirms what we who have suffered the alcoholic torture must believe. Do I believe that my body is as abnormal as my mind? And what does he mean by that? What does he mean by is this? There's a physical component to alcoholism. Do I believe that? And then it goes on to say, does it satisfy me to be told I can't control my drinking because I'm maladjusted to life? Is that why I'm unable to control it? That I'm in full flight from reality? And if I'm in full flight from reality, which I've been many times, is that the reason I can't control it? Or am I an outright mental defective? Yes, I am, but that's not why I can't control it. These things are true to some extent, in fact, considerable extent with some of us. But am I sure that my body is sick as well? It's not just in my head. When I take a drink, it's not just in my head. In this doctor's belief, any picture of the alcoholic which leaves out the physical factor is incomplete. Do I believe it's incomplete? Do y'all believe there's a physical part of alcoholism and a mental and a spiritual? Just like the circle triangle. Do I believe there's a part of Alcoholics Anonymous for each part of that illness? The doctor's theory that we have an allergy being a abnormal reaction. Does that interest me? Do I have an abnormal reaction when I put alcohol in my system? As layman, my opinion as to its soundness may of course mean little, but as ex-problem drinkers, can I say that his explanation of this allergy makes good sense, this abnormal reaction? Does it explain things for which I could not otherwise account? You know, I had hundreds, maybe thousands of times taken a drink and the drink just take over and I wind up doing things I didn't want to do with people I didn't want to do them with, in places I didn't want to be, hundreds of times. And so there's this allergy, this abnormal reaction that he's talking about. It's as though we work out our solution on a spiritual as well as an altruistic plane. Altruistic. These doctors favor hospitalization for the alcoholic who is very jittery or befogged. More often than not, it is impressive that a man's brain be cleared before he is approached, as he then has a better chance of understanding and accepting what we have to offer. The way they cleared my brain was not with treatment. There were a lot of people going to treatment. In fact, there were headhunters in the meetings back then to get people into treatment. But what they did was they detoxed me at my house, or my granddad's old house, and they did it with orange juice and honey and sauerkraut. Mm. And that took around 3 days before they took me to my first meeting. There were 3 different guys. It was Tom, Roy, and Mickey, and they took turns being with me. And I just couldn't believe, I mean, I didn't know why they would stay there all that time. I mean, they must be charging something, you know. Mm-hmm. Because I had no idea. I had no idea about what was going on. The subject presented, and now the doctor begins to write. It says the subject presented in this book seems to be of paramount importance to those afflicted with alcoholic addiction. Is it possible to be addicted to alcohol and not be an alcoholic? And that's a great question to ask myself, because they're going to address that through this book. This doctor says this after many years' experience as a medical director of one of the oldest hospitals in the country treating alcoholic and drug addiction. Is it possible to be addicted to drugs and not be an addict? That's a question I like to ask myself because I've asked it about alcohol. There was, therefore, a sense of real satisfaction when the doctor was asked to contribute a few words to the subject on which is covered in such masterly detail in these pages. It says, we doctors have realized for a long time that some form of moral psychology was of urgent importance to alcoholics, but its application presented difficulty beyond our conception. What with our ultra-modern standards, our scientific approach to everything, we're perhaps not well equipped to apply the powers of good that lie outside our synthetic knowledge. Now, this is when I reread that and I change a few words in there and give them a meaning. It says, we doctors have realized for a long time some form of psychic change or spiritual awakening was of urgent importance to alcoholics. But this spiritual experience's application presented difficulty beyond the doctor's conception. What with the doctor's ultra-modern standards, the doctor's scientific approach to everything, doctors are perhaps not well equipped to apply the powers of God that lie outside our synthetic knowledge, this doctor's synthetic knowledge. He's admitting he knows what we need, but he can't make that happen. He admitted his own powerlessness, just as these other two doctors that were major contributors did too. They did the same thing. Many years ago, one of the leading contributors to this book came under our care in this hospital, and while here, he acquired some ideas which he put into practical application at once. Later, he requested the privilege of being allowed to tell his story to other patients here, and with some misgivings, we consented. The cases we have followed through have been most interesting. In fact, many of them are amazing. The unselfishness of these men as we have come to know them, the entire absence of profit motive, and their community spirit is indeed inspiring to one who has labored long and wearily in this alcoholic field. They believe in themselves and still more in a power which pulls chronic alcoholics back from the gates. So this guy, he was in the hospital and he was carrying the message. You don't have to have, years of sobriety and being in AA and all of that stuff, because this guy, he started this thing while he was in the hospital. And, these people that I work with and that other people work with, they don't necessarily get sober. So don't gauge how successful you are with that. If you're carrying this message, that's what it asked me to do. And, I can stay sober doing this. It helps me to stay sober. Going to the hospital, visiting with these people in the bed. I'm not there to save that person. I'm there because that's what it says to do. And if I want to grow spiritually, that's what I need to do. I need to be there and try to help other people to establish this relationship. Of course, an alcoholic ought to be freed from his physical craving for alcohol, for liquor. Have you ever had a craving for liquor? This often requires a definite hospital procedure, so the treatment or detox, before psychological measures can be of maximum benefit. These doctors believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action on these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy or the manifestation of an abnormal reaction. This phenomena of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. So have you ever had a craving for alcohol once you took a drink? Did you need to work the next one worse?
Mhm.
Then you're not the average tempered drinker. If that's ever occurred in me, I'm not the average tempered drinker. These allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all. Do I believe that I can one day use alcohol in some form? Once having formed the habit, found they cannot break it. Once having lost their self-confidence, have I lost my self-confidence where alcohol is concerned? Their reliance upon things human, sponsors, mom, dad, judge. Their problems pile up on them and become astonishingly difficult to solve. That certainly happened when I was drinking, but it's happened many times in AA also, sober. Throw off the emotional appeal seldom suffices. Have I ever had the irate judge or the irate sheriff? I had that. The in-laws, my mom, my dad, my brother, sister, uh, the guy from AMPI that I sold milk to. Yes, I've had to throw off the emotional appeal, and it did not stop me. The message which can interest and hold these alcoholic people must have depth and weight. What do they mean by depth and weight? To me, it means they used to be like me. They used to drink like me. They understand what it's like to drink alcoholically, and they're not drinking anymore. They found a solution. In nearly all cases, their ideas must be grounded in a power greater than themselves if they are to recreate their life. Do I want to recreate my life? And that can be from anywhere, not just when I came in. This thing promises that if my ideas are grounded in this power, that I get to recreate my life over and over and over. If any feels as psychiatrists directing a hospital for alcoholics, we appear somewhat sentimental, let them stand on the firing line, see the tragedies, the despairing wives, the little children, let the solving of these problems become part of their daily work and even their sleeping moments. And the most cynical will not wonder that we have accepted and encouraged this movement. We feel after many years' experience that we have found nothing which has contributed more to the rehabilitation of these men than the altruistic movement now growing up among them. So if my life is not being recreated like it's describing here, then perhaps my ideas are not grounded in a power greater than myself. Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. What was the effect produced by alcohol in me when I drank it? Great question. Did I have this sensation that was elusive? And while I could admit that I was doing some things that were injurious and that alcohol itself was injurious to me, after a while I couldn't differentiate the true from the false, meaning I couldn't tell when alcohol was working, it did some things for me. It gave me a sense of belonging, ease, and comfort. But I couldn't tell when it started to do things to me. And that was in one drinking bout or over all of my drinking career. So my drinking bouts would start when it was working. In the first few drinks, it was giving me that thing. It was doing some stuff for me. I felt like I belonged. I could talk to people. I could do things I couldn't do without it. But at some point, it started to do things to me. My mind would get involved in it. I would start to think these people are out to get me, or I'd start some kind of BS in the bar or at home or wherever I was at. And it started to do things to me, and I couldn't stop that, and I couldn't tell the difference of when it started to do that and have the power to stop. To me, did my life seem the only normal one? It only seemed normal when I was drinking and it was working. That's when my life seemed normal. Was I restless, irritable, and discontent unless I could experience a sense of ease and comfort, which come from taking a few drinks. Did drinks bring me ease and comfort that I didn't have without drinks? When I was sober, I was restless, irritable, and discontent. Restless, that happens in the body, and we have a part of our inventory for that. We call it a sex inventory, but it's really a conduct inventory. And that's the inventory of my body. Irritable occurs in my mind, which takes me into the future and into the past, and what I think about you and me and my situation and God and whoever. And there's an inventory for that, fear inventory that happens in the mind. It's unreasonable fear. And discontented, that's my spirit. Even if I get it like I want it, I'm not satisfied. And there's a part of inventory for that. Resentment inventory is an inventory of my spirit. And they even say that resentment is the number one problem, and all forms of spiritual illness stem from that resentment. So I know that's a spiritual illness. Did I see others taking drinks without punishment, with impunity? You know, the people around me, they were drinking and going home. They would have a few drinks and go have supper, go to work or wherever they were doing. Not me. After I succumbed to the desire, as I did many times, did the phenomena of craving develop? Did that craving develop in me when I would take a few drinks? Did I pass through the well-known stages of a spree, which I just described? The beginning, it's working for me, it turns on me, and then it turns into a dumpster fire. Emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. Anybody ever make any firm resolution? This is repeated over and over unless I can experience an entire psychic change. Do I believe that? Or is there some other solution to that? This book's saying that without this psychic change, there is very little hope of my recovery. And then it says, on the other hand, and strange as it may seem to those who do not understand, once this psychic change has occurred, the same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol. That's been my experience. Not only could I control it, I didn't want to drink. It wasn't necessary. I didn't need it. The only effort necessary being that required to follow a few simple rules. I wish they wouldn't put that word in there. I don't like rules. But it is this doctor speaking, not the alcoholic. Keep that in mind. Men have cried out to this doctor in sincere, despairing appeal. Doctor, I can't go on like this. I have everything to live for. I must stop, but I cannot. You must help me. Here, this doctor is going to again admit his powerlessness. Faced with this problem, if the doctor is honest with himself, he must sometimes feel his own inadequacy. Excuse me. Although he gives all that's in him, it's often not enough. One feels that something more than human power is needed to produce this essential psychic change. So do you believe that something other than human power is needed to produce this psychic change in me?
And would you say that psychic change can be exchanged with spiritual experience?
Yes. Well, this guy is essentially saying that, look, you have to have this spiritual experience, spiritual awakening, or psychic change, whichever. I think those are synonymous. In order to recover from alcoholism, then maybe I'd want to make sure that be my focus. that it not be appeasing people or, doing goofy things that I used to do to try to combat alcoholism. Though the aggregates of recovery resulting from psychiatric effort is considerable, we physicians must admit we have made little impression upon the problem as a whole. Am I the type that will not respond to ordinary psychological approach? Well, I'm not really sure about that because he kicked my ass out. He seemed to think that wasn't going to work. This doctor doesn't hold with those who believe that alcoholism is entirely a problem of mental control. Do I believe that? Do I believe that alcoholism is a problem of mental control? Or is that just part of the problem? This doctor's had many men who had, for example, worked some period of months on some problem or business deal, which was to be settled on a certain date favorably to them. They took a drink a day or so prior to the date, and the phenomena of craving at once became paramount to all other interests, so that the important appointment was not met. Has that ever happened to me? Has that ever happened to you? Did I need to be somewhere and I take a drink and I couldn't make it, or I showed up in a condition where they would? These men were not to escape. Mark that and double mark that. I did drink to escape sometimes, because escape that restless, irritable, and discontent. I would drink to escape that, but once I had escaped that, once I had changed the way I felt, I didn't stop. And there's a reason for that. If it wasn't for alcoholism, I would have been like my buddy and had a few drinks and went home. I'd gotten that sense of ease and comfort, and that would have been enough. But I have alcoholism, and this craving sets in motion when I take a drink. And I'm not, I can get all the ease and comfort I want, but I'm not going to stop there. And that's been my experience.
They were sober when they took it.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I never took the first drink drunk. And I always had this connection of being drunk, and that's why I'm drinking, and it's not. It says they were drinking to overcome a craving beyond my mental control. I can't tell you how many times I would be drinking and think, you know what, you ought to go home. You got to go to work. You got a business, you got a family, you got responsibilities. You need to be here. You need to be there. And man, I just never could make it. I just couldn't make it.
That's why my son don't have anything to do with me, because I got drunk and didn't pick him up when I was supposed to.
Yeah.
He's 34 years old and still not doing it.
There are many situations which arise out of the phenomena of craving, which cause men to make the supreme sacrifice rather than continue to fight. The supreme sacrifice could be suicide, but it could also be the death of self. That's a supreme sacrifice. Surrender. The classification of alcoholics seems most difficult and in much detail outside the scope of this book. There are, of course, the psychopaths who are emotionally unstable. We're all familiar with this type. Always going on the water wagon for keeps. Have you ever tried to stop drinking on your own?
Yeah, sure, thousands.
Were you remorseful when you found you couldn't pull that off?
Sure it is.
Did you make resolution?
Sure.
Never really a decision. Does that describe you?
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to psychopath.
No, it's on paper.
Yeah. There is the type of man who is unwilling to admit he cannot take a drink. I've been that person. I plan various ways of drinking. Yeah. Change of brand environment. There's a type of who believes that after being entirely free from alcohol for a period of time, he can take a drink without danger. There's a manic depressive type who is perhaps least understood by his friend, about whom a whole chapter could be written. I wish they would have written that. There's a type entirely normal in every respect except in the effect alcohol has on them. I wished I was that person. They're often able, intelligent, and friendly people. Now, it's given me the description of classification of alcoholics, and I've had to some degree all of these problems. And then they say all of these and many others have one symptom in common. Do I have this symptom? Can I start drinking without developing this phenomenon of craving? What does my experience tell me about that?
Yeah.
If I drink, I'm going to develop this craving. And you know, I've had people in here in AA that would go out and take a few drinks, and they were able to control it for a little bit. And the next thing you know, they're drunk and they can't get back. So it took a little time for that craving to take effect. This phenomena, as we have suggested, may be the manifestation of an allergy, which differentiates these people and sets them apart as a distinct entity. Have you ever felt set apart from and different from your fellows? Especially where alcohol is concerned. It has never been, by any treatment with which this doctor is familiar, permanently eradicated. The only relief we have to suggest is entire abstinence. So they're saying, well, just don't drink. And you hear that in our meetings. Just don't drink and go to meetings. Keep coming back. All of those sorts of things. Do you know where we stopped last time? Or were we? I'm not sure if we got this far.
We can stop whenever you're ready.
Let's
Okay.
let's go ahead and finish it. We're almost there. This immediately precipitates us into a seething cauldron of debate. Much has been written pro and con, but among physicians, the general opinion seems to be that most chronic alcoholics are doomed. Do I believe I'm doomed without this power greater than myself or the psychic change? What is the solution? Perhaps this doctor can best answer this by relating one of his experiences. About a year prior to this experience, a man was brought in to be treated from chronic alcoholism. Do you have chronic alcoholism? He had but partially recovered from a gastric hemorrhage and seemed to be a case of pathological mental deterioration. He had lost everything worthwhile in life and was only living, one might say, to drink. Have you ever been there? He frankly admitted and believed that for him there was no hope. Yes, I've been hopeless. Following the elimination of alcohol, there was found to be no permanent brain injury. He accepted the plan outlined in this book. Do I accept the plan that's outlined in this book? Have I seen other people recover from a even worse place than I was? 1 year later, he called to see me. I experienced a very strange sensation. He knew the man by name and partly recognized his feature, but there all resemblance ended. From a trembling, despairing, nervous wreck had emerged a man brimming over with self-reliance and contentment. His doctor talked to him for some time, but was not able to bring himself to feel he had known him before. To this doctor, he was a stranger, and so he left. A long time has passed with no return to alcohol. I had that experience with Dr. Brinkley. I was having lunch with a friend of mine in a cafe who had lived with Dr. Brinkley for a while in his family. She was a really bad alcoholic. And Dr. Brinkley walked by, and so I stopped him and said, "Hey, I'm Mark Mack," and he recognized the name, but he didn't recognize me. So I've had that experience, that very experience.
And was this man Hank Parkhurst? I think it
I
was.
think it was, yes. When I need a mental uplifting, I often think of another case brought in by a physician prominent in New York. The patient had made his own diagnosis and decided his situation hopeless, had hidden in a deserted barn, determined to die. He was rescued by a searching party and in desperate condition brought to this doctor. Following his physical rehabilitation, he had a talk with me in which he frankly stated that he thought treatment a waste of effort. Unless this doctor could assure him, which no one ever had, that in the future he would have the willpower, in italics or in quotes, to resist the impulse to drink. Can I, on my willpower, resist the impulse to drink? His alcoholic problem was so complex and his depression so great that he felt the only hope would be through what we then called moral psychology or spiritual experience. And we doubted if even that would have any effect. However, he did become sold on the ideas contained in this book. Are you sold on the ideas contained in this book? Not only do I need a spiritual experience, do I believe that this is the way to gain that? And can I see it in other people? He has not had a drink for a great many years. His doctor sees him now and then, and he's the finest specimen of manhood as one could wish to meet. This doctor, Wilkins Silkworth, earnestly advises every alcoholic to read this book through, and though perhaps he came to scoff, he may remain to pray. William D. Silkworth, M.D. Is it Dwayne?
It's Duncan. You're just wrong.
I'm wrong.
It's not from the King Ranch. It's not Dwayne.
Oh, it's not.
Hey, Mark, this is Fitzmayo, I think, our southern friend, right? The barn. This is down here.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I'm marking it Fitzmayo. I think I'm right.
Okay, we'll stop there and next Wednesday we'll continue on with